Tara over at Appalachian Homesteads did a video yesterday talking about the different sources of food storage, whether you make it yourself or that you go out and purchase it, but that to start somewhere and to make sure that you are obtaining the skills required to be able to take care of your family. And it's not just even an emergency situation. It's just that it's nice to have those things on hand so that you're not having to run back and forth to the grocery store, and so that your budget is not predetermined depending on how the market in food fluctuates, that instead you have a backup to be able to help you get through bumpy times, whether it be prices or jobs or food allergies or a diet. It matters what you store in your home, because that's what you're going to eat. And if you don't get along with it well, then it's going to make you sick. So we're going to walk through everything. We have clothing storage, we have fabric storage, we have heating fuel storage, dry goods, immediate use goods, convenience goods, laundry soap, lighting, water. So we're going to walk you through all of it. And we have had to adjust our food storage to our eating requirements, our eating habits, our eating sensitivities. And some of the different ways you can do that are with fermentation, salting, smoking, dehydrating, canning, and then you can also keep an array of foods in a freezer. As long as there's power, it will stay good. And those are some of the techniques that we use here on our homestead, and also that we have showcased in our channel. We like to freeze produce from the garden rather than canning it, because our bodies seem to like it better. So what our freezer will be full of will be frozen tomatoes, frozen celery, and our assortment of meats that we have, because we raise pork, lamb, goat, quail, rabbit, chicken, duck. So we have an assortment of all of those things in our freezer at any given time. And we always keep at least 2 full-size boxes of butter in the freezer as well. We usually cook with lard, but for my husband, he likes to have butter for putting on his bread. These are the canned foods and convenience foods that we keep. You see, there's not a whole lot of them. That's because we don't use them a lot. And they make up just good, normal recipes as far as things that you could take to a dinner party without having to go to the grocery store. Things that we keep in storage that are convenience items. We have molasses, baking powder, all of these things we keep in bulk. We have baker's chocolate, we have cocoa, we keep pectin sauce, which is a salsa, maple syrup, mayonnaise, soy sauce, salad dressings, honey, peanut butter, and the big secret of my prepping lifestyle is tomato paste. Not tomato sauce, tomato paste. With paste, all you have to do is reconstitute it with quite a bit of water, depending on how thick you want your sauce or your soup, and you can make tomato soup, you can make tomato, did I already say tomato soup? You can make tomato soup, you make tomato sauce, you make vegetable soup, you can make spaghetti sauce, you can make pasta sauce, you can make pizza sauce. You can do everything with this. And I love it because it is in a tiny space. It doesn't have a lot of water in it, and so it's not heavy. Again, we have at least a year's supply of it on hand at all times, usually 2 years supply, because we go through it a lot. Other things that we keep on hand are baking soda, canned mushrooms, seasoned salt, anything that we use frequently that just helps our cooking to be easier, and we know that we're not allergic to it, we have it. In this row, I keep my herbs. On the top, I keep my bulk tea. That's what I make kombucha out of. We have way more than we need. Kind of funny. And also our herb teas that we actually drink. So herbs are in the clear plastic bins right here. The reason they're in the bins is because the jars like to sit up a little better if I keep them in bins, and then I can just pull the bins out. And then I have several boxes of Ziploc bags so that when I've dehydrated something or we've butchered an animal, we can put them into double Ziploc bags and just put them in the freezer. I don't use the butcher paper and the butcher plastic. The Ziplocs seem to do a better job for me. And then below that, I have my shelf of non-grain flours. And I don't have a lot of them because they have kind of a limited shelf life. I have almond flour and I have coconut flour, and I'm trying to get into cassava flour. So multiple flours that we don't eat frequently, but when we feel kind of depleted, like everybody in the world gets to eat treats except us, that's what I do. And I'll show you. These are some of the smaller containers. They're still sealed, and so I can pop one out and take it up to the kitchen when I need to use it, and because it's a small size, the shelf life stays pretty good. So I try to buy these in small containers that get used up without having a really big 50-gallon bucket of this flour that would go bad because I would be opening and closing it all the time. The other way that I address that is that when we have bulked goods, I take Ziplocs and I take whatever was in the bag, whether it be beans or salt, and I put everything into Ziploc bags, and then I put it in the 50-gallon bucket. And that way, every time I open that bucket, rather than introducing insects and air to everything in the bucket, I'm just pulling out a Ziploc bag that's big enough for me to use for a month and taking it upstairs. We have, I'll try to pan a little bit. We have bulk wet wipes. We have a power inverter. I believe that goes to the solar panel. We have sleeping bags and etc. that we would grab at the same time as we grabbed our 72-hour kits. This is our utility room / root cellar. This is where we keep our potatoes. It's also where we keep our empty jars. It's where we keep our lard. It stays cooler than the other parts of the basement, and it has a concrete floor. It is where we keep everything that's storage that we don't necessarily pull out a lot. You can see down in the bottom left, that is matches and candles. Next to it is several gallons of white vinegar. And then over to the further right, we have boxes on the bottom full of oil. That is canola oil and corn oil that we would probably not use for eating, but would be good for other purposes. It's just good to keep oil around. Again, we have lots of boxes of empty jars. And then we have, you can see right there in the middle, those hoses are for filling up our water storage buckets. They are food grade. They're only used for that, and so when we change out the water in our water storage buckets, that's how we do it rather than dumping buckets. We have light bulbs, we have our Dutch ovens that if you needed to be able to cook on an open fire, they're in the top left. We have lamp oil. We have I think that's a white gas heater there by the toilet paper, and then we have bulk toilet paper. So we actually don't have any potatoes in here this year. Generally, we have 8 boxes in here by now, and this year I was so busy come time to go pick them that we didn't go to the potato pick, and so we need to go to the local warehouse and get 4 boxes. The problem with getting boxes of potatoes from the warehouse is that they have been sprayed with sprout nip, which means that instead of sprouting, they rot. And we've had a real problem with getting commercial potatoes that rot. If we get them directly from the farmer out in the field, they haven't had sprout nip on them, and they will sprout, but they won't rot, so you won't have those nasty smells in your basement. This is our laundry room, and we keep rat poison or mouse poison, spider traps, fly traps, and also bulk laundry making supplies in our top shelf. And then down in a space that's not quite so high up, we also have several gallons of bleach. And we don't use Clorox or bleach or anything very often, but we do feel like it's a good thing to have on hand, just in case you really need to be able to sterilize something and you're not able to boil it, and also for if you need to add it to water. This is the other half of our storage room. You can see to the left, right here, we have a board in our window. For one thing, we would prefer that people couldn't see our food storage, but for the other thing, it keeps out light. You don't want a lot of light in your storage room. It ages things, it gives things funny flavors when there's too much light. We store our bulk long storage commodities in buckets, and we store them whole. We do not store them as flour. Flour has a very, very short shelf life compared to a whole grain. Once you crush that germ, you end up, the oil gets into the flour and then it goes rancid. You lose a lot of your nutritional value. So if you can eat wheat, if you can eat grains, instead of spending money on flour, spend money on whole grain and get yourself a wheat grinder. We have some things that are not in buckets yet, and that's because we just purchased them recently, but that is really bad practice. The minute that something comes home in bags, you can see them right there. We have beans and flax and probably some salt too that needs to be put into buckets ASAP, because if you had any kind of natural disaster, anything in a bucket is going to be much better preserved than something in a bag, whether it's being protected from water or being protected from damage from something falling on it. Again, the way that we prepare those is to put them in small Ziploc bags that will last us for between a week and a month, depending on what it is. And like a small Ziploc bag of salt will last us for 6 months when it gets taken up. Whereas a small Ziploc bag of coconut flour will last us for one recipe. Here you can see that I have in the bottom left a 50 pound, 5-gallon bucket of honey. We also buy 1 2-quart jar of honey every time we go to the grocery store, so that we always have at least 6 of those. We would like to have more. They do start to kind of get crunchy on you the older they get, though. It's not a big deal. This honey is 12 years old and it's just as good as new. It's just that they crystallize. The other things that you're seeing are vitamins that we keep around. That's what you see in the middle shelf in that little. I'm gonna have to pan on this one, so don't get dizzy, but I had to get closer so you could see the detail. So at the top, we have our cheese press, and then in the back corner, we have the pressure cooker. You can kind of see it right there, pressure cooker. In front of it is a container of pectin for making jams and jellies without having to use a lot of sugar. So, and then you can see the cheese presses, the forms that are right there. This right here is one of the parts to my meat grinder, my electric meat grinder, that's actually from, what is it called? An Oster. It's an Oster mixer that also has a meat grinder and a grater attachment. But we only use that for the meat grinding. It does a good job with the meat grinder. In the back here are all my, in this shelf here are all of my extra school supplies for homeschooling. I have collected an assortment of pens and pencils. I have an extra printer that my mom gave me, paper, notebooks, and then unfortunately right here in the front I have our medical bag for the animals, and I guess you could use it for people too, but we use it now on the animals because we go to doctors when we need injections. But for the animals, I have syringes, I have needles, everything that I need to be able to administer antibiotics or something, you know. I think the only thing I've ever given them is antibiotics. Some people also can give something called, I think it's luteins is what it's called, that can bring your animals into heat for breeding out of season. We also always have bottles on hand. If ever there was an emergency and someone came to our home and they had a young child, wouldn't we be so grateful that we had the proper bottles and nipples to be able to help them, because it would be very, very difficult for a young baby to figure out how to swallow from a cup rather than being able to suck from a nipple. So even though we don't have babies in our home, we always have baby bottles on hand. And if you have really young children, it's an easy way to keep them hydrated while also putting their medicine into a bottle. That's what we do when we do our herbal teas, to keep the girls hydrated when they're ill, is to put their lemon and honey and a little bit of lemon tea into it, keeps them hydrated. And then if I need to be able to put medicine into it too, it kind of masks that flavor. You can see below we have quick oats, and those are all dry goods. We have macaroni, we have quick oats, we have regular oats, we have pinto beans, hard white wheat, hard red wheat. We have all sorts of those in all of these containers. And if I go down a little further, you can see some of the other stuff. I hope my camera doesn't drop. This is so heavy. So regular clear gel. So that's also something that you can use to make things gel. And just lots of fun things. You can get cookies, and that would be at the LDS Bishop's Storehouse Cannery. A lot of times they're in the same building, and so it's how LDS people take care of their needy and their hungry, is that they have these places with food available that you can purchase bulk goods at a very reasonable price. Okay guys, this part is not going to be easy to get into, so I'm not even going to try. This is the space underneath our stairs. And you can see that it is full of water. It's not just this one barrel with the other things on top of it. There are two more barrels behind this big blue barrel. And that's where we keep our water storage. We like to have it downstairs because then it doesn't put extra weight onto the upstairs, and it doesn't take up space in usable space, if you know what I mean. It's very close to the laundry room, where we have a faucet that we can screw those white hoses in and then just fill them up from there, and it just works really, really well. It's important to keep your water somewhere that it won't freeze. We had a neighbor that when our electricity went off, they had their only potable water in their garage on a concrete floor, and so when their house was no longer warm, their garage cooled off and all of their water froze. They had absolutely no way to get drinking water. This is also where we keep our Zeer Pot, that orange pot. That pot gives you the ability to refrigerate with nothing more than sand, a small pot inside of it, and then water. And then you put a moist towel over the top. So this is where I keep my out of season tools and my empty buckets. Let's see if I can pan up a little bit. There's our Oster in the top left that we use for meat grinding, and then my garden seeds are in the box next to it, and then a hand meat grinder is next to that box, and then more seeds in the black tub with the cage for a hot pack canner there. A little bit further down underneath the meat grinder, I'll try to use my fingers. This is our steamer juicer, our cream separator, our pressure cooker, our dehydrator, our camp cooker, trays for the dehydrator. And then you can see right here I have eggs. We do not refrigerate our eggs. We don't put them in our fridge. We just keep them down here where it's cool, and we just bring up as many as we need for a meal, and that way they stay cool. You can see how I have hung up all of my, where's my finger? All of my canning lids here. I put them on a string and just hang them, and it's better, in my opinion, than putting them in a drawer. During the summer, we cook down in the basement with this little teeny tiny countertop stove. This is where I store my really big, huge soup kettle. I use it when I'm going to can. This is what I use because it has a very heavy bottom. We got it for $20 at a secondhand store. My husband was so brilliant to get it. You can see I have one of my, what are they called? Pickle urns. What are they called? So there's our fourth one. And then we have baskets in here that hold onions, garlic, squash, other things that we use on a daily basis. This is where I store my wool dyeing kit because you don't use it for food prep after that. So all my dyes, my pot, and that's where that's stored. Sorry guys, I can't do this one on the tripod because the space is so small. So this is our clothing closet, our seasonal clothing closet. So you can see all of our coats of all the different sizes that we have. Now if I'm given something that's really high quality and it doesn't fit the kids yet, this is where it goes. Again, I'm really sorry that the space is so tight. And then in here, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 boxes of wool here ready to be used. But then I have bolts of fabric. We have our air conditioning unit. We have some emergency first aid supplies. And then the rest of it is just fabric. And the fabric is so that we could make clothes if we needed to. I have zippers, thread, scissors, I have wool, polyester, cotton, just about everything. And I didn't spend any money on any of it. It was just given to me when there were things like estate sales or people that were moving, or if I had found some really nice sheets at a secondhand store, or if our sheets had holes in them, I would just fold them up and bring them down here because they make amazing fabric projects. This is our downstairs wood stove. It's a beast. The wood box, the firebox is enormous. You could just about put a whole tree into it. When we first moved into the house, it was one of the selling points because we wanted to feel like even if it wasn't in the best place possible, because it was downstairs, at least we had an alternative source of heat. And the first thing we did when we moved here was to buy 2 or 3 cords of firewood that was already split. We didn't have time to really do it ourselves because we moved in January, which is the coldest month of the year except for February. So this is our wood stove. We keep it in operating condition, and the nice thing about wood stoves is that you can just let them sit until you need them. This one is actually much cleaner than the one upstairs, the reason being that it has a very long draw. It's in the basement, so that chimney goes all the way through there, all the way up through that floor, all the way up through that floor, and up through the top of our house. So it has a very long draw. It has a chance to really get hot. We've never had a problem with the chimney fire in this stove, and we burned with it for 2 years. The one difficulty with having a wood stove in your basement is that all of your food in your basement will get warm. And our basement serves as a root cellar without any special modifications. It serves as a root cellar in the winter, and we can keep potatoes that stay good in it until the end of March because it stays cool. So when you're thinking about putting in a wood stove, make sure that you are thinking of those kind of details. Our wood stove upstairs heats our whole house with just one fan blowing on it. And in order to improve our storage, we need to get one of those fans that works just from the heat of the stove. Because when our electricity has gone out, we had to stay very close to our wood burning stove because the rest of the house didn't warm up because we didn't have a fan to move that heat around. And if we ever had to have another family live with us, we could fire up this wood stove and just have to deal with the loss of the potatoes. It gets very warm down here when we use it. It is not an efficient stove. It is not an efficient stove. We lost a lot of heat through the fact that it was just an enormous firebox and there wasn't really any way to turn down a damper to keep it from always being at a full roar. That was the one thing we didn't particularly love about it. The only way to really damper it down was with the screws that you see on front of the doors. Those you can open up to allow it to breathe better, but there wasn't really any way to turn down the chimney so that so much heat wasn't going up and rising through the chimney. So that is a view of our food storage situation. Hey guys, please make sure that you like and subscribe to our channel. Make sure you like the video, I guess. And if you think it's really great, make sure to share it on your different media platforms because it helps us out a lot. All the money that comes in from our ads on AdSense go towards building infrastructure on our farm. And you know, the more views we have, the more we can really do on our farm. And we really appreciate all your support. So we'll talk to you later.